if you want to be fully obedient, if you want to do all of God's will, you need to pray. Paul says to pray without ceasing. And, why is that so important? Because there's been so many times, right, in my own life where I have fallen short, where I have not done the things that I wish I would have done. And, this is what Paul talks about in regard to why do I do the things which I hate, right? It's because he wasn't doing the things that he knew he should have been doing. And so there's been so many times where I should have prayed for somebody, but I didn't. But had I been in prayer, I would have not been concerned about what people were thinking. I wouldn't have been in unbelief. Because ultimately that's what it is unbelief. I wouldn't have been moved by the condition, but I would have been moved by the Spirit to be obedient, to lay hands on the sick, right? And so, again, the reason I say these things, Jesus says, he said to Peter, he said, pray, enter into prayer lest you enter into temptation. And had Peter, it's like, could you not stay awake and pray an hour? So you're an hour away from total obedience, where you're not going to go through the temptation and feel like crap afterwards. If you'll just give yourself to the Lord for those 10 minutes, it may turn to 20 and then 30 and then an hour, maybe 2 hours. And as it says in Jude, pray in the Spirit, building yourself up in your most holy faith, keeping yourself in the love of God. When you do this, it's incredible. It genuinely becomes, you don't even hesitate to do all of God's will. Peter, when we think about Peter, what he went through, the things he experienced, was a result of the fear of man. That was the temptation for him, right? It said the enemy wanted to sift him like wheat. And the Lord had prayed for him, but he wanted Peter to pray. And the reality is, Peter did not pray. And when the people asked him, you were one of the 12, you were with Jesus, he denied it. He even cursed. He was so afraid. And so, but had he been full of faith, had he been prayed up in his most holy faith, perhaps he would have responded with, I most certainly was with Jesus. Thank you, Lord. He would not have been afraid. He wouldn't have had to go through all that. But nonetheless, we see the Lord's mercy in restoring him. There's a lot of things that you don't need to go through, that Christ would rather you not go through. And if you just give yourself to prayer, if you give yourself to him in prayer, you'll put off the flesh, be built up in your most holy faith, and you'll do all his will. And the only one you're going to fear is God. Thank you, Lord.